Welcome to the Breaking Muscle Podcast, where we bring you the stories and insights of some of the leading minds in the fitness industry. I am Pete Hitzeman, managing editor at BreakingMuscle.com, and the hosting duties for today's show are handled by our very own Shane Trotter. We had a short break in the production schedule last week as I was riding my bike across Iowa, article coming soon, but we're back in full swing now with some really cool shows coming up on the schedule. On today's show, Shane sits down with Master RKC Andrea DuCane to talk all things kettlebell. DuCane has an astonishingly diverse background, with experience in everything from dance to martial arts to aerobics to Pilates before she found the kettlebell. She details why a perpetual focus on technique equals success, and explains the relationship between focus, perfection, and humility. She and Shane dive into the importance of a wide variety of movement for youth development, along with the need for a comprehensive mobility framework for men and women. You'll learn why bodybuilders should be in the yoga studio and yogis should find the weight room. DuCane's focus today is on training for women in aging populations, and she discusses the need to create training for women that isn't simply aimed at making them many men, along with the personal challenges she's faced as a female expert in a male-dominated industry.
I'm Shane Trotter, your host today on the Breaking Muscle Podcast. I'm joined on the line by Andrea DuCane. Andrea is in Minnesota. She's one of two original Master RKCs. She has a wonderfully diverse background that I'm excited to get to ask her about. So we appreciate having you on, Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Shane.
Certainly. So your experience is quite diverse, like I kind of alluded to. I was looking ballet, jazz, Argentinian tango, aerobics, kung fu, tai chi, Pilates, and I think all that eventually led to kettlebells.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. Can you just give some background on your journey into the fitness industry and kind of what that looked like?
Sure. First of all, I was a late bloomer. I was very small and petite as a child. My parents weren't big on getting me or my siblings into organized sports, and it wasn't until after the death of my mother, and I was searching, and I was an adolescent, and it was not a good place for me, that I discovered ballet. And it kind of came to me literally in the ladies' bathroom when I was taking a learning center course to get out of high school. I was doing whatever I could to get out, and I saw these gals stretching on the floor, and I was so mesmerized by that. I thought, I have to try this. And so I stepped into a class at a local ballet studio, and they happened to have a guest teacher visiting from Russia, and she was incredibly strict. She had a stick in her hand, and it was my very, very first ballet class amongst company members. And she came around and just slapped people, and at one point she said to me, you have your perfect body for ballet and perfect feet, now you have to work hard. But there's something about that experience that spoke to me, number one, about how you're always striving for perfection, and you're never maybe going to get there, but you're always striving for it. And that carried me through college and post-college. When I traveled and moved and I needed to connect with people, I found dance, and it was a form of movement. From there, it kind of naturally went into the fitness world because I couldn't always get to a dance class. I discovered back in the day aerobics, and so it was a way to be strong and feminine. And then it progressed when I met John DuCane. He was in martial arts. I started, and I just went really fast into it. Number one, having the mental strength that I got from very tough teachers in ballet and the physical ability to learn movement, I progressed quite quickly. And I guess having older brothers that I had to, kind of wrestle with also taught me how to be tough. So it brought something out that was just latent and ready to come out. So that took me into Tai Chi. Then I went into more fitness with Pilates, and around that same time we discovered kettlebells. And when I got my hand on that, I just thought, wow, I was just could not believe what a tool this was. It spoke to me as a mother of young children. It spoke to me as an athlete. It spoke to me as a woman. And I thought that those both, or I should say all those populations were not necessarily, being addressed at that time with kettlebells. And so it just opened up a whole new world for me. And I was so excited to share it. And I hope I can continue to share it through the world.
What was it about the kettlebell that was kind of so magical and life-changing?
Well, number one, again, coming from my movement background of both Pilates and dance, the way it's designed, it's very functional, so it allows the body to move in different ranges of motions than you can with, a traditional barbell or even a dumbbell. So it's triggering and using the body in a way that made sense to me. And then on the other hand, you had the real explosive ballistic part of it that was unique. I mean, back in those days, you didn't really do a lot of ballistic work with weights. I mean, I wasn't doing Olympic lifting, so it was either running, or, I don't know, step class. And so this really allowed people that didn't have the experience of being explosive and really had a short period of time that they could work out, and they wanted to maximize their time. It put it all together. I mean, how ingenious is it that you have a handle on something that you can swing between your legs? You're, utilizing the entire body, especially the posterior chain, which is neglected in a lot of athletic endeavors for people. It just made perfect
society.
sense. In society, I mean, we sit. So it was it's like this perfect tool.
It's interesting that you took it and you saw a need in like you said, with mothers like you were, but also you've taken it and you've brought it to elderly populations, and because originally it was really kind of your tactical areas that were seemed to be attracted to it, the firefighter, policeman, military. So I think that's unique and that's neat, that you saw the need for it there and saw that it's really an implement that promotes life movement, kind of more free flowing versus the rigid and compartmentalized.
Absolutely. I think it addresses, speaking of older populations, one thing that's a big concern that people don't often, think about, but we all know about osteoporosis, and that, of course, affects women and men, more women, especially the longer you live, and we know that impact can help build bone, but there's a lot of people that can't run, and for various reasons. So, yes, they'll have senior or older populations go into the pool, and swimming is great. However, it's not doing anything for your bones. It's not doing, it's minimally for your muscles. And what's really key is keeping the muscles strong. And you're not going to get that from riding a bike, and you're not going to get that from swimming. And like I said, a lot of people aren't able to run and do high impact aerobics. So the trick is to use them in a way that is, obviously going to be functionally challenging, strengthening, without risk of hurting the joints. That's another issue as you get older. And I think that, again, there's no tool that's better. Yes, of course, you incorporate body weight and, calisthenics. I mean, you have to incorporate that in as well. But as a tool, there's nothing that's going to take you to those goals. And you can modify it for every age, every possible physical problem. You can modify the use of this kettlebell tool. So. Yeah,
and it's beautiful in the simplicity. I've heard it called the gym in the palm of your hand, and in reality, you need a couple kettlebells, and that would be it for everything when you add in those other modalities that you talked about. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that really struck me, the importance of that strength training element as people age, is I hadn't seen my mother-in-law. She's passed away now. This is a number of years ago, but we hadn't seen her for a year. She had lived in Europe, and she'd been under a lot of stress. And when I saw her after this year absence under all that stress, she had lost so much muscle. It was shocking. I had never. It was just so shocking. And she called me into her room, and she was very concerned about something. and she was using a walker, and very, very frail, and she'd stopped her other exercise for most of that time. But she called me in her room, and she undid her blouse, and she showed me her right arm, and she said, "What is this?" And she says, "I don't have it on my left arm." And I looked at it. I'm saying, "Well, that's your bicep." That's your bicep. It's okay. It's a good thing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
exactly. It was almost like you could laugh, but the truth was
Yeah.
that she had not lost all her muscle on her left side, her weaker side. The only reason she had that was because she had to use her right arm more than her left arm. That's how much
Hmm.
weight she'd lost, and the fact that the uh, lack of knowledge about the body,
Sure.
and it just drove home that you have to keep moving, you have to build strength. And I think, and there's studies to prove this, that as people get older, strength training along with mobility are far more important than cardio. So if you think that the only thing to keep you healthy is just running or sitting on that stationary bike, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Certainly.
And that
Well,
again is where the kettlebell comes in.
and with the kettlebell, with strength training in general, you're going to get far more mobility. And it's most people don't think that. They think of strong and tight, but you're going to get far more mobility, far more joint mobility in the movement pattern, as long as you're not doing a strict bodybuilding workout, than you would in a aerobic workout, just running. Me, I work with high school athletes, and typically my long distance runners have some of the worst mobility that needs to be corrected. So
Absolutely.
and the kettlebell especially promotes that. Think of a Turkish get-up.
You're using everything when you're using a kettlebell, and that is an advantage, and that's, you just hit it right there too. Young populations, high schoolers, even younger, will get a huge amount of benefit out of training with a kettlebell. They don't have to go heavy, and you can make an incredibly effective workout. In fact, I like to say to a lot of my clients, or in a class or in a course, there's nothing more satisfying than making a lightweight or a light kettlebell heavy for the given exercise, and you can modify it and change it up just enough to make that very light bell extremely challenging. And that's really pretty cool, because you don't need to have an entire gym full of different sizes. You can have really just a few, and then make them useful by making the exercises harder, by making something, a palm press or a bottom-up press, or putting your body in a different position, and challenging the entire body. And kettlebells lend themselves so well to that because of their design.
Sure. Now, it could be somewhat imposing to people, simply because it has so much adaptability, and it really is a skill. But that's really the beautiful thing, if you look at it in the long run, is that it's endlessly entertaining, in all that you can do for it, with it. So I guess that kind of brings me back to, you said something at the beginning that I love so much. I think it's a great thing for all people in the fitness industry and life in general to come back to. It's that perfection. Where were you talking about seeing perfection and wanting to strive towards it?
Right. Well, I have a little key phrase that I use, and it's basically technique equals success. So it kind of falls into that, meaning that if you're striving for perfect technique, perfect form, or perfection, and you really put your mind on that, no matter what it is you're doing, that is how you reach your goals. And you won't if you try to take shortcuts. You won't if you push yourself too fast. You won't if you hold yourself back too far. You have to always keep that in mind, and that's how you find you'll reach your goals. And the whole journey of striving for perfection, I think, is a very satisfying one. And that came to me again when I was a very lost adolescent after the death of my mother. Unfortunately, a very ugly death through cancer. And I was in ballet class, and they had some beautiful quotes about artistry, and life, and on the walls. And I just sat there and I thought, I was brand new. I was very late. I was almost 18 years old when I started, so I was too old to become a professional dancer. But I found such sanctuary and such healing in that environment of I'm not very good, but I'm going to work at being as best as I can be. And then each step you take with that in mind, you get better and you get better. And maybe I'll never grasp what I think is of perfection, but that's part of the joy. I
Mm-hmm.
never have to feel I'm bored. I never have to feel like, oh, I know it all. I have a sense of humility through this search to perfection. And I think that
Yes.
that'll take people a long way.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean that's what perfectionism. A lot of us in the fitness industry are type A's, so we're drawn towards that possibly, and it's not inherently a great quality at all. You need to learn the balance of it. But just as a general rule in everything you do, to the humility, like you mentioned, to understand that you will never reach perfection, but uh, it's again, if you can take that humility and yet strive for it, there's a great lesson in that, and it promotes endless entertainment and endless interest in whatever you're doing because you're always inching closer. There is no such thing as perfect form, but that doesn't mean we don't strive for it. There's no such thing as perfection in anything. I mean, I have a philosophy background. I always think of Plato's forms, and that's probably way out of left field for most people, but it's the idea that there is some concept that's most whatever. You could have the most chair, and we think of chairs because they approach it as chairs, but you're always striving towards something. It's just like values or anything else. It's a beautiful concept to at once understand. You will never reach it and still be striving.
And enjoying the journey of it.
Uh-huh.
I feel there's a lot of satisfaction in approaching life that way. Because yes, you make a little accomplishment here, oh, that went really well, or that lift was great, or this whatever competition was great, or I moved well here. I could work a little harder in this aspect. Okay, I'll do that next time. So it's I also think that a lot of people in our industry tend to be a little ADD or ADHD. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have that kind of thought process in the back of your mind, you're not going to get bored and just have to run off for variety's sake. You can still keep that focus and keep achieving your goals, but keep yourself safe. And I liked what you said is that yes, perfection is a double-edged sword. If you're not doing, or I should say, you need to find that balance
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of people that go to perfection, but they do it in the wrong way. They aren't looking at it as maybe it's an end in of itself instead of a
Mm-hmm.
process, and that can lead to some, just very imbalances in your life, in your body, resulting in injuries or other problems down the road, illness for that matter. And I think that, of course, we have to find that balance, but in general, I think a lot of people want to find the shortcuts in life.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I want to lose weight. Okay, what's the pill or what's the extra? What can I do? I
Mm-hmm.
want to spot reduce here. I want to be
Sure.
whatever it is. I want to increase my load a huge amount. I want to get faster. And there are no shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
And especially us Americans really want everything now, or yesterday. We want it yesterday. I mean, it.
Yeah.
We can't. It's not how life works. It's not how our bodies work. You have to realize taking a shortcut is that much closer, brings you that much closer to possibly, getting injured or making that wrong step. And, take your time, accept the fact that you might, you're going to have ups and downs, peaks and valleys, right? And that's okay. But if you keep your mind on that goal of, I'm just going to keep working and doing my best, and I'm okay with where I'm at because I can see how far I've come, that's a great motivating way to live. And I think that if we can exude that, if we can live that, it's a great way for our clients to see how
Mm-hmm.
can you, wow, you're working hard here, and yet you keep going. You're not giving up. You keep going. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we are role models, and we have to think about, the whole picture.
No doubt, and I love the concept of the process of understanding. The outcome is we're an outcome oriented world, especially here in the U.S. As you alluded to. But the performance industry, especially, is really starting to understand this process mindset of that you cannot be outcome oriented. There's nothing about outcomes that we have any control over. Goal setting was such a huge thing for so long.
Yep.
I think having a strong purpose, a strong vision of where you want to end up is essential.
Mm-hmm.
But goals can be good and bad if they're too rigid. If you're talking to an athlete and the athlete he's a running back and he wants to rush for 2,000 yards, well, that's highly dependent on what type of team he plays for. Are the games close or not? Are they having to come from behind? How long is the other team holding the ball? He has no control over that. Plus, it's very personal. It's not in any way about the team. So there's just a lot that is problematic there. I think in life, the more we can tap into, what we're doing in this moment and why we're doing it. What's the greater purpose behind this? So somehow that idea of perfection, striving towards perfection, and yet humility and process orientation.
It's kind of the yin and yang of the two, in a sense, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think sometimes our egos or the persona we want to present to the world gets ahead of us a little. And you're right. I mean,
Yes.
we don't function in a bubble, and we have to be cognizant of all the variables that are around us, the environment, everything that's happening. And a person will see, oh, somebody reached this goal, this PR, or had this thing happen, and I want to do that. Well, it may or may not happen. That may or may not be a good goal. And I think sometimes that idea of, yes, what is, again, the idea of movement and being good in your movement is for perfection of that. Perfection of the entire person, like I'm going to be the perfect athlete or the perfect this, that, really a dangerous road to go down. And, it's very interesting. There's so much pressure in a different way, and I'm sure you see this with your athletes, with, social media there.
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, there's
talk about outcome orientation and
it's all about
worrying about ego and what other people think. It's a trap, really.
And I think for you, it's really guiding those young men and young athletes to find their own inner guide, and they have to somehow filter out some of that, because that's not going to lead them to the goals. And because that's how they can get injured. That's how they can make it, do a stupid mistake. And on the other end, for older athletes or really busy working people with kids, I mean, they have to just, they have to be honest with themselves because of the stress of life and the fact they are sitting at a desk, or they have whatever financial worries or fight with they have to worry about all that. They have to take that with them and then leave it. I mean, understand that those stress is a huge, it can really affect everything, and yet you don't see it. It's the silent killer. It's the silent wrecker of your workout.
Yes.
And, we have to be a little more kinder to ourselves. And then I still believe that if you keep that and understand your client and yourself, today I don't feel it today. Okay, let me take this other part, and I'm just going to try to do the most beautiful, smooth get up. I'm going to do it really light. I'm going to take an easy, light workout, or whatever it is. I'm going to, for my presses, I'm going to keep them easy today, but I just want to see how well can I make that movement happen? How well can I feel that to the bottom of my feet? I mean, taking all the principles. And so you can still have the idea of, I'm going to try to do the best I can, but that's how you are in any given moment. And you just have to filter out the pressures that we see. Oh gosh, so-and-so on Facebook, oh, they're doing so great. I look at that person did their PR, or looking at the other person across the room, and that's comparing ourselves to others. As we know, we learned that in kindergarten, is not good, and we still do it. And it's human nature.
Yes.
And I think it must be tough to really now tough to handle that with just the way these young kids from the time that they're in grade school are having already the pressures, where we didn't have them till we were in college.
Sure.
So again, we have a big
different world.
job. Yeah, we have the job to be a role model.
Yes, no doubt, and to model. You talk about a process mindset. Well, if you're, yelling at the ref about a call 5 minutes ago, well, you're not modeling that.
Exactly.
So it became so apparent when you were explaining that to strive for perfection in anything you're doing is inherently going to require that process, qualitative, mindful approach. So it's I love that in every paradox, when you really dig into it, what seems paradoxical is quite essential and obvious, which is kind of cool.
And simple in a sense. I mean,
Exactly.
I think we complicate things a lot more than we need to.
Sure.
And like I said, that old saying, you learn everything you need to learn in kindergarten. I really think that's true. And
Sure.
it's true.
Sure.
I mean, being kind and being on time and being neat
Sure.
and respectful and all these things and working hard and it's just we forget that. We get so focused on what we think we need to achieve or accomplish or whatever our goals are, and or we get held back by the fact that I had this injury. I'm gonna give it up now.
It becomes an excuse. It becomes we impose these limitations that aren't really there.
Yes.
And inherently, there's a great book, The Obstacle is the Way, and I think that's the mindset that we have to instill in all our kids. We can't solve our problems with the same means that got us there. The idea that everything is, we live in a world where so many things are possible with innovation. We just have to be creative, and that's what we have to be instilling in our kids. You were saying you had kids. How many? And can I? What ages?
Sure. Well, they're grown now. My daughter Nicole is married. She got married about a year or so ago, and she and her husband. We all it's a family business. We all kind of work for Dragon Door, but she
Awesome.
and her husband are doing a really cool thing. It's on a platform called Twitch, which is a gaming platform. They have I think it's called Heroes of Fitness. So what they do is they play games. Tim was a gamer and he understands this, and they play games live. People can watch them, and then they do exercise breaks every half hour or every hour. So anyone who's watching them signs up to play with them or watch them. They stop, they open their green screen, and they have a gym. And they do body weight, they do kettlebells, they do deadlifting. They make this whole population of people that are into gaming and sitting get up and work out with them.
That's awesome.
And it's really awesome. So they're kind of this. It's very unique. So please look up Heroes of Fitness on Twitch and look them up for what they're doing. But they're really trying to get this whole idea of anybody and everybody needs to be moving. That's pretty cool. And then my son's he's a martial artist, and he also has been working for Dragon Door too. So like I said, it's
a boy and a girl.
Yes.
Boy and a girl.
Family business. We swing bells together, you stay together, you work out together, you do martial arts, you hit each other. So we've been always super, super active as a family, and
that's so awesome.
Have a lot of hobbies like that. So yeah.
Good. A lot of my work is geared towards education and this almost indoctrinated sedentary lifestyle that we give them if you look at the school day. So I think that's so wonderful, especially what your daughter's doing. Such a cool idea. I'm curious, is there, at a young age, is there big differences between boys and girls that you notice, and differences in how you would approach training young athletes?
I think, girls generally develop sooner than boys, so they actually have, they can have more strength at a certain age.
Sure.
I think the thing to consider is, first of all, depending on the age of the child, I think kids need to be just moving. So before you get them into some kind of really super organized sport, I think having modern dance classes in school, mandatory. Or like a Tai Chi or something, or social dancing, because the coordination and the partnership that happens between the two is incredible. The coordination, the kinetic activity, the movement is super important for building the athlete later. Or giving the sedentary type of person an opportunity to move their bodies. And I think that should be literally starting in first grade. They should be having mandatory modern dance or movement classes. It could be including, Pilates, crawling, animal stuff, gymnastics, all combined, because that is the type of thing that kids need. Now, once they get a little bit older and they're going to be starting organized sports, then, remember, of course, children go through different growth spurts. During the growth spurts, their bone plates can grow at different times, which means they'll have a big growth spurts. It can put stress on their bones. Their muscles aren't, they're catching up. There's also issues with the core. A lot of children, they don't actually have the sense of a core that we have as adults. So again, the more simple movements that we can give them young will help them develop the patterning they need later. And for strength training, just keeping it into kind of, I think, everyday movements like deadlifting patterns, some squatting, some body weight or very, very light load. You don't need to load them up a lot, but you need to make sure that their alignment, right, the good alignment and good movement quality is what's important, and variety of movement. And we start these kids so young in hardcore, all they're doing is just soccer, 5 days a week. One sport at the age of 5 or 6. It's terrible. And then, of course, like I said, gymnastics or something or I guess that would be one of the biggest ones. Very high risk sport. At least they're getting a full, well-rounded kind of movement patterning from that. But in general, especially for the team sports, I think these kids they really need to do a variety of them. And then the training you're going to have them do would be just to keep their bodies functioning well and keeping the coordination developing and balanced in strength. So as girls get older, you're going to watch for that valgus collapse. You're going to watch their knee tracking, especially when they do basketball type of thing. There's a lot of hip, and because we're growing, the hips expand, and the growth spurts can be quite quick, so you need to keep your eye on that type of thing. And the boys just watching, again, they're doing throwing sports. You just have to keep them, kind of balance that out by making sure they have some good, strong, good and healthy movement of the shoulders. So you can't go heavy. It's not about making, heavy PRs for those young children, but moving them with full range of motion, balancing out the body, and good, clean movement is what's going to be important, I think. Really, they just need to get off their butts.
That's exactly right. To ignore that is to just ignore maybe the biggest problem in society right now.
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room. A minority of kids are being pushed perhaps too hard. I mean, a tiny amount. Parents are pushing them way hard. Then there's a bunch that try some things for a while and they push a little bit. But that's still a minority. The majority of the kids are not doing enough. I don't know about your childhood, but mine, I wasn't active in sports, but I swam, climbed trees, hiked for miles. I could walk any adult in the ground. I was not a quote-unquote athletic. The only thing I could do at school was I could do the flexed arm hang for over a minute. I think I got the school's record. And yet at the same time, I was the last child, no kidding, picked for kickball, always. You take Andrea. No, you take Andrea. That's how bad it was. So what is our definition of athletic? What is our definition of being active? But yet I was an active kid. So getting kids to move is the real key, and getting them to love something. And, some of that goes to our organized sports.
So they can enjoy movement later.
Exactly.
So it's not painful. Organized sports often isn't enough to counteract the massive amount of sedentarism going on with these kids. I see that often. Like we're talking about, we're so highly specialized, which of course is creating more imbalances. But more than that, there's almost a concept that playing for play's sake, movement for movement's sake, is only going to happen at your sport of choice. That's just not enough. It's not enough to just reserve play for these highly specialized places. It probably goes somewhat to the obsession with safety we have nowadays, that we're going to shuttle our kids to places where they will be supervised to play, so by a qualified coach, so everything is great, and then shuttle them home and keep them in their little safe pod. We've got to move, and schools have to promote that, and anyway,
And neighborhoods need to, I mean, I know not
Yes.
everyone's lucky enough to live in a safe neighborhood, but, kids do need to be outside. They do need unstructured movement, unstructured time. I mean, that is, of course, the whole skill set that'll take you into your adulthood. And if we regimentize, we take not only the joy out of it, but we actually prevent their brains from developing to problem solve and to, find ways around something. And movement's part of that because, that's how we're wired, And there's, it's great when people read, if they're actually reading something, but just to sit and be passively watching television, playing a video game, and you go to these young kids, they all have their tablets, and they're sitting there with their headphones on, and the parents are in there walking. Nobody's talking to each other.
Yes.
It's and then they go to
Deeply
school.
isolated.
Yeah, they're isolated. They go to school and they're required to put them away, but then everything's regimented, and they go to a class, and then they go to maybe a sporting event, and it's regulated, and it's like let the kids go outside with a ball and play kickball on their own, or catch as catch can, or I don't know, something. And I know that's not easy for many people depending on where they're living, but however we can get these kids to move and have fun with it, and adults too. I mean,
yes. Yes.
I mean,
No
find
doubt.
a hobby, find a passion.
Yeah, no
There was
doubt.
an article in a few weeks ago in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune about the benefits of Argentine tango dancing, which is one of my hobbies, and they're approaching it from the brain development and Alzheimer's and keeping the brain sharp. So complicated movement, especially when you're also having to sense and be responsive to another person, where then you add in the element of moving to a music, it actually helps to create a much healthier brain. And so it's not just something that's super easy, but physically complicated that helps. So maybe it's Tai Chi if you're not into dance, or something that requires you to be really using your brain and your movement and your body that is incredibly beneficial for people. And I think kettlebells kind of fits in that because it's a little bit more mindful than
there's no doubt. You have
machine.
to be mindful. It's a skill, and that, like a dance or anything else, that you're kind of in flow with. The first time you try a kettlebell clean, it's very awkward, and there's no real. You would know better than I do, but there's not a perfect coaching cue that's going to make you get it right away. It's really a feel thing. You have to kind of be in flow with the bell.
It's very individual, and that's how we're wired. But absolutely, the clean, the technical complexities of the get up, the coordination that's required there, and even the snatch, they're all, they are not simple movements. They're using the whole body. The more joints that we incorporate, the more times we have to use our breath along with our movement, all that, and sequencing movement, all that is what helps to build a strong brain as well as a strong body. And those are definitely important, I mean, for developmentally for the children, but also as we're aging. So I love basically how it's like a circle. And, if you think of growth and aging, it's a circle. And we want to kind of approach it from keeping that circle moving and flowing and starting and just keeping it going. And if you stop it, that's when things are going to fall apart. Or if you don't initiate it in the right way, you can have children that aren't active, the children that aren't coordinated. And if they're not coordinated, they're not going to enjoy movement. If they don't enjoy movement, they're going to sit. Then they're going to have increased weight, have injuries. And it's just that slippery slope.
There's not one person in the United States that couldn't stand to have had more physical literacy throughout their educational process, more love for movement, more understanding of nutrition. I mean, to make movement itself is great for your brain, for your creativity. It's been called cognitive candy. We can all benefit from a lifelong inclination and understanding of how to be happy and healthy and move. It's really the true core. If it doesn't happen early, then it's not going to happen late, or it's harder to happen late.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much harder to develop those kind of habits the older you get, and you can. And I love to say you're never too old to start something, to learn, to start dancing to start kettlebells, I don't care what it is, or Pilates. You're never too old. It's never too late. But it's not going to be as easy. You know, it's just like learning a language. I mean, we all know it's much easier to pick up languages when you're young than to try to pick them up as you get older. And I think we would give our children tools to be really healthy and happy. And as you hit it on the head, because happiness is a big part of life. We all strive to be happy. If you're not feeling good in your body, I guarantee you're not going to be happy. And we all know that people want to medicate, self-medicate. They want to medicate in some way. Yeah. But the best self-medication is movement. And that's been documented study after study. Movement increases endorphins. And you don't need to run, a half marathon to get that runner's high. You can get a kettlebell high by just really pushing it and having a good hard workout. It reduces depression, it reduces anxiety, helps you sleep, everything. And those are lifestyle issues that are super important. And people feel like I'm too tired, or I don't know how to do this, or I'm not going to be good at it, or I've got to lose weight before I can go into the gym, and all these blocks that stop them. And I think if we take those barriers away, the younger we take those barriers away by giving them the tools and the understanding and the enjoyment, then we don't have to worry about it. They'll be healthier. I mean, medical costs would drop astronomically, but of course, let's take away recess. Let's take away money for sports, and that is absolutely the wrong thing that has happened.
Sure. I read, I think it's for, the BMI is not great, but I think for people that by the BMI are overweight or obese, it's annual per person $1.5 thousand extra dollars. So imagine if you have a whole family that's getting older and they're all in poor health, how much more that's going to cost you. Not that that's the reason, but that's just another one. You have been mostly, or a lot of your work anyway, has been with elderly and populations and women, which traditionally are not your kettlebell and strength populations, or at least they're not attracted to that as much. There is kind of a shift, I think, with women starting to understand the amazing benefit of strength, and that they probably need it more than men, where men might need mobility more. I just wonder how do you go about making inroads in those populations, and what are some of the things that you tend to notice working with women and elderly, in kind of dispelling some of their preconceived notions, or however that might look?
First of all, there is a lot of fear involved, or there has been, and I think you hit something on the head, that people, women, are changing their viewpoint about strength, or at least a population are. And the first inkling in my mind was, it goes back to one of the Schwarzenegger's movies of the Terminator. What's the actress's name? Hamilton? Was it Linda Hamilton? When she, it was the second or third one, and she had really built herself up, and she got really, big arms, and just, she's
cut.
She was cut. And I think that was like
Rocking
the first
pull-ups. I remember the scene.
Yeah. And she, it was the first time, I think, in Hollywood's history that they really showed that. And they showed it from her grit, her determination in that movie, that I'm not going to be a victim, And I think that was kind of, personally, I had that drive myself, but I think that kind of brought it to a little bit more mainstream, and it became, it's okay to show that you have a little bit of deltoid or a little bit of muscle. It's attractive. But before, it was not. It was literally, you just have to be super skinny, but you definitely didn't want to show muscle. And I think that kind of was a little bit of the start. And then there, of course, before then, there was, Jane Fonda was coming out, Don't Laugh, because she did an awful lot, because she really got women to get out there and do some little bit of weightlifting, and getting them to really think about fitness and enjoy it. And Laugh As You May about all that kind of stuff. It got women certainly moving, and not just I'm just going to diet myself to be skinny. They wanted a shape. They wanted to have just a little bit of a shape. So, but those combinations of things started to change women's attitudes. Now, what I find interesting is that women have always been focused on, we want to have a nice derriere, we want to have a nice butt, and we worry about our thighs, outer thighs and inner thighs, and, we want to have a nice flat tummy, not necessarily cut abs, but flat tummy. what are the men? What were they into? They wanted their biceps, their pecs, I call it the mirror muscles, They wanted their
That's
mirror
right.
muscles. And then they had no butt, no legs, no core, and, seriously, put them into a regular, calisthenic or women's, I don't know, button legs class or Pilates class, and they would die because they didn't have the small muscles. They had the prime movers, they had big quads, but they didn't have the small muscles that actually, stabilize your hips and your better balance and so forth, or let alone a core. So what women have done is actually made them more resilient and a little bit less likely to get injured than traditionally what I have seen a lot of men do. The men come in and they have, you ask everybody, okay, how many in this group you have shoulder issues? Okay, well, just if you can raise your hand, I mean, because they can't raise their, but
Sure.
because they're, they want to lift heavy, they want to go heavy, heavy, heavy again, and they don't understand movement, and
well, they're all push, and they sit around the laptop all day. I mean,
and they don't work on their butt because they think that women only want pecs and biceps. They don't work on the butts, and we know the butt is, I say a big butt, healthy back, and so that's what's kind of interesting. So women don't necessarily historically want to have muscle. I mean, there is always a subgroup of women that do, and that's gotten bigger. That subgroup is growing quite a bit. But in general, you want to see a little bit of shape, but you don't want to be too muscular, and you want a well-balanced body. So at least women come from that perspective, and I think that whole subclass of women be strong, and that is growing, and that is growing and growing, and that is absolutely fantastic. And I think the fear of being viewed as, oh, I'm going to get too big or too muscular, that's starting to wane. And I think what has been great is the fact that the focus on functional movement, the focus on using the whole body, actually makes it easier for women to look at strength and joining these course classes, because they get it. And in general, I would also say that women tend to learn complex movement patterns. They learn the swing better than men because they aren't trying to muscle it up. They don't have the upper body strength. They have to use their lower body and the proper technique. And also, in general, women tend to listen to their instructor. They're not afraid to say, oh, I'm not doing this correct. How can I do it better?
There's less ego when it comes to strength, probably.
Exactly, because it wasn't their forte. They're just happy to be in there and getting stronger. So a lot of incredibly positive things have been working its way into the mainstream. Now, I've been involved in this for the kettlebells at least 16 years or so, but in general strength longer than that. But it's really grown into the mainstream. I'm so happy and I'm so thrilled. And I feel that a lot of my hard work has paid off, because you can see a kettlebell just in hotel rooms, in hotel gyms, in YMCAs around the world. I mean, everywhere. And I think that is, I feel that that's a sign of success for me. For men, I think they are now starting to see the value of movement and mobility in a way they hadn't before. The advent of how calisthenics have become more popular, which lends itself into a little bit more mobility in some areas, from thinking of gymnastics and so forth. So I always used to say I'd like to see the big bodybuilders in the yoga classes and the little skinny minis in the strength room. And I think in a certain way that's starting to happen. You're seeing more men that are really into strength, focusing on their flexibility, looking to their mobility, and realizing that they aren't a true athlete unless they have all those elements. They're not. You can't be. And the women realize, I need strength. So not all, of course, but I think that that's growing in the general population. And I'm excited.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and I think there's been a lot of movement, just like you're talking about, both towards the kettlebell and women into strength. I know Ben Bruno trains Kate Upton. He's always putting videos out of her deadlifting a ton. I mean, it's really cool to see. There's also, I think, an understanding that to have muscle, to go towards the aging population side, to have muscle is and mobility. That combination is a great way to not only extend your quality of life, but to extend your life, to prevent osteoporosis, to keep you safe coming in and out of the bathtub or wherever you are, so you don't break your hip. But also, it's to have muscle. Muscle is more metabolic. Metabolism is a great little X factor if you are worried about physique. And women who are concerned about their butts, well, that's great. Let's train the heck out of the butt. Train it all day long because it's the biggest muscle in your body, and it's probably the most important for a lot of reasons. Not that we want to train one muscle in isolation, but
yeah, and actually that other for the seniors as we're getting older, and with older boomers, is the building muscle, preventing sarcopenia, which is a muscle wasting disease, which is just like osteoporosis, is absolutely crucial, because when you start to lose that muscle, that's when you start to lose your balance. That's when you fall, when you probably have already lost bone, and that's when you break something, and that's when you die.
Yeah.
And also having
Cycle.
that extra muscle on you, well, if you have a catastrophic illness, you're going to have some reserves. And you go through your fat really fast, and if you see those very thin people that are very frail, they're the ones who are going to not going to survive. You want muscle, and actually you need to have a little fat too. I mean, fat is not as evil as we think. As you get older, you do need to have some fat. We need to have tissue. We need to have that, because that's what's going to feed ourselves and keep us healthy, and help us if we fall. You want that balance, and that's why we can really do a lot to encourage your parents, your grandparents, any kind of older person to be active, but be smart, train smart, get the mobility in there, watch the way your joints are moving, because obviously you're going to have, elbow issues, knee issues, ankle issues, hip issues. You have to work through them and around them. But don't avoid it, because then if you avoid that altogether, that's when you start to have, again, fall into weakness. So train smart, but train.
Well, mobility is, especially for male populations, I think really is a challenge. I think of myself being an athlete, and when I was younger, it was never emphasized. I mean, you warm up at the beginning. The stretch is, you're playing around, laughing. It's just kind of a side note. Then maybe before a track meet, you get your buddy to just wail on your hamstring for a little bit, and then you go run. And little did you know that made you more likely to get injured than less likely, because that's not a good pre-competition idea. But I think for men, mobility, they start to understand very quickly. I always tell people, big reason maybe that I'm so insane about form is I was never taught how to power clean, and I have back pain to this day from it. It can be very damaging. So I think a lot of males find themselves in this situation. Well, I'm in my 20s. I'm hurting a lot. This is kind of crazy that I'd be in so much pain. I'd never really been given a framework for mobility. I can look here, and they're telling me to smash this and smash that, and looking here, and they say stretching's good. That's a somewhat intimidating field for probably women too, but I think a lot of men to come into. I think particularly if you're now, I think of my dad, now you're in your 50s. I've never been mobile. It all hurts. What do I do?
You hit something, yes, very, very much on the head. And I see it in workshops all the time. When at the end of the day, I'll stretch everybody out, and the big guys are just crying, and I'm doing simple flexibility work, and that needs to be done pretty much every day. And if you neglect that, it will, like your spine, if you don't move your spine and the muscles surrounding the spine, and then the joints don't move, eventually those joints will calcify and they won't move. You have to move things. Now, that doesn't mean you want to be hyper flexible. Hypermobility is a whole other problem, which I have, and that's not a fun thing either. But if you don't start to move and really seriously focus on it, it's going to be a big problem. Now, this is the catch. It's not fun. Okay, it's just not fun. You're not pushing up the big hunk of iron. You're sitting there with sweat and tears dripping down, and you're trying to, whatever, touch your toes
Sure.
or get a good stretch, and it's not fun. It hurts. It's not pleasant.
No.
And so do people want to do it? No.
Mhm.
And what's the first thing they'll go through a hard class, they want to run out and not finish the cool down and the stretching afterwards.
Yeah,
You have
that's right.
to do it. It's like taking your vitamin every day. It's like practicing your scales. You have to do it whether you like it or not. And the earlier you start it, the easier it will be. But if you don't, getting locked up, that's how you just leads you right into injury. And then
You'll compensate somewhere.
You'll compensate, and then you're going to get scar tissue, and then it just gets worse. So
Sure.
it's something that, again, along with that idea of movement, and first of all, you're absolutely right about something. You need to be taught how to stretch. There's a technique to it. You have to understand, what muscle you're trying to stretch and how do you activate the what are you stretching when you think you're stretching? And I'm shocked at how many times I see people doing something they're not even attacking the muscle they think they are. They're stretching something completely different. You got gals that are overstretching because they think they have overrun their stretch reflex, so they think they have to get way in there. They're just destabilizing their joints and their ligaments.
Yeah.
And it's like, understanding the body on that level is super important. Yes, muscle needs to meet. First of all, joints need to move the full range of movement. Okay, each joint. Second of all, their muscles are there to move the joints. So the muscles need to be free to fully contract and fully extend. And a hypertonic muscle that's tight and locked up, which you get oftentimes in the hip flexor, or maybe it's the hamstring or wherever, or lower back, that is restricted movement that some other part of your body will have to compensate for. So you can't neglect it, and it's not fun. And, you just have to teach those guys, hey, this is going to make you feel better. And truly it will. But you're going to have to do it every day. You have to do it every day.
Yeah, I've heard the concept described as joint hygiene. It's got to be done every day, and like you said, it's not like a PR. You're not taking a Twitter video. Look, bro, I touched my toes today. It's less inherently motivating. That consistent, steady approach must probably be the ticket. Just like I think people think it must be different than lifting. Lifting, well, I understand. I'm going to have small incremental gains over time. The more consistent I am, the better. Stretching, I want to stretch. I stretched yesterday. My hamstrings are still tight. What's going on? So,
I know it doesn't have the I don't know. It doesn't have that that sense of satisfaction. Oh, I just accomplished something. It's long term, and you have to do the other problem is that it takes time, and you have to be patient. And who's got either time or patience? In order to get a decent stretch, you have to actually hold it for at least 30 seconds, if not 3 rounds of 30 seconds, or for a minute, with nice, calm breathing. Okay, not fun for a lot of people. And then if you think about, okay, you have to hit kind of all the main muscles, right? And you have to think about, okay, if you're doing it a little bit of stretching before, which is in some cases it's worthwhile to stretch certain muscles before you work out, and certainly afterwards, you have to think about, what did I just do, or what am I planning on doing for the actual workout, so I can augment my, workout strength gains and keep myself healthy and balanced. So it requires some thought, as well as the fact that it's not exactly as enjoyable, but you're going to feel better when you start to do it regularly. And it takes time, but I do believe that if people are consistent enough, even within 2 to 3 weeks, they're going to start to notice how they feel better, they move better, and they will recover faster from hard workouts.
The second part of that, to go back to talking about physical literacy in schools, the next thing that I would certainly think would go with that as core would be a very, very light introduction into breathing and meditation. Now, you wouldn't tell people it was meditation, but just a light introduction. I think if you have that, then you can, I've always, not always, but more recently looked at stretching as I don't program a time, I program amount of breaths. I'll try to do 5 seconds in through the nose, 7 out through the mouth. and just, so I'm going to hold this for 10 breaths. That tends to take care of the quality of the stretch too, because like a lift, stretching has to be done with some sort of quality. But again, if you have that foundation, you have far greater potential for success down the road.
Absolutely. Counting breaths is an excellent way to gauge your and encourage your strength, because of course we all know now, thank goodness, it's the latest fad that's happening, which I think is a positive thing, is breath. Some of us have been breathing mindfully for a long time, but for the masses, breath is like unique. And absolutely, there is a type and style of breath for each thing we do, every type of movement, and that includes stretching. And you're hit it on the head. A great idea for the thought of core for children is teaching them breath. It could be the first thing they do in the morning when they get to school. Just take a minute or however long and just breathe into the belly, out through the mouth, or however you want to do it, and then a number of breaths for each child as a way before they start work. Or instead of a timeout, have the child take 5 breaths.
There's a Baltimore school that's doing that. No more detention. Meditation. Yeah.
Meditate, breathing, breath work. Absolutely.
Sure. You could do it at the beginning. It doesn't have to be seated on a pillow. So we can throw the stigmas out. That you could have kids. There's something called crocodile breathing that I teach all my athletes. You're laying down on your belly. You're laying down flat, and you're breathing in and out, and like a crocodile. I guess I've never really seen a crocodile, but your lower abdomen is expanding, and you can see it in your lumbar spine as you lift your low back by inhaling big through the belly. You're feeling your abdomen expand and lift your back up off the ground. It brings a lot of awareness to actually how you're breathing, and kind of puts a goal behind it. So it's not near as boring, at least initially.
And people have an opportunity to feel their breath, because they have the floor as a mark, so to speak. And something interesting on that note is, if you're an instructor, there's a lot, the breath is very complicated, of course, with the rib cage and expanding, the diaphragm descending. People can be locked up. So if you actually place your hands on the back of their ribs and you just lightly hold them in there as you're breathing, you'll notice sometimes that one rib will move, because the ribs need to expand back and out, right? So the whole rib cage is expanding. So sometimes they'll be pushing their belly out, but their ribs aren't expanding. And sometimes one side will be moving and the other one won't be. So it means that there's some kind of blockage or locking going on in that one rib cage and that one side of the body, which could affect, physical performance.
No doubt.
But anyway, just a little side note.
That's
to get
very
a chance to work with your kids.
Yeah.
But yes, teaching people to breathe. Wow, is that interesting?
We're
going way back to the basics here, Shane.
I know. This is kind of a transition, but I was very interested what your perspective might be on as a very accomplished women's trainer in the fitness industry. It is a male-dominated field. What's that like? Have there been any inherent biases? Has it been a challenge in any way?
Well, yes, and yes, it has been a challenge. When we started the RKC, it was, as you said earlier, really attracted pretty fringe or extreme type of athletes or, people, firefighters, law enforcement, military, just crazies, And so, I'm a petite female. Besides, I'm built like a dancer, so I'm very petite. I don't tend to get really big and bulky. It's just not my build. So, but I have good movement skill and I have good coaching skills, and I'm strong for me. And so when we started developing the program, and it was a process too, I would have big teams during the RKC, and I had many instances where I'd have big jarhead who would just not look at me, would not listen to me, but would go to my assistant, who in general was a male because there's so many more men, because he wasn't gonna take anything I had to say, and I would have to prove myself in some way to get their respect, and it was very hard and very frustrating. Had a couple instances I felt like walking away and quitting. And then as more women got in and we started to spread, which was my goal, it became better, right? We realized that, well, women are strong. We have a lot to contribute, and it's not about the pure strength, like this amount of weight. It has to be this lifting. That means you're qualified to be an instructor. It has to do with, number one, within again, who you are, what's your strength? Are you able to understand the principles and utilize the principles of our strength? So, it grew, and that has made it easier. But it was interesting because sometimes some women that have come up since we have, things have taken off and there's more women, and they can't quite understand why. They just don't see the work that I've done and some of us early gals have done. We've really had to work hard, and it is still definitely male dominated. I think it's slowly changing, because women are strong. And one thing I would hope that does not happen is I don't want to make women little men. I don't think we have to prove ourselves that we can be just as strong and just as fast as a man, because it's not the point. The point is about what are you doing for who you are, and how well are you doing it, and how within the parameters of whatever skill it is you're doing. So to become a mini man should not be our goal. To be super strong and resilient and good athletes and good movers, that should be the goal of everybody, and that goes for the men too. And I think things are definitely changing, and I think it's getting better. Yes, it's still there. I think there's still stigma, and in certain areas in particular, probably, obviously mainstream collegiate teams and sports and athletic centers are going to be a little bit more hesitant to include women in on that. But I think that is changing, and I think that it will continue to change as women find their own confidence. And that's a big part of it, because when you're starting out and you're trying to break some ceilings, at first I would be either too soft and I was considered weak, or I was too strong and I was considered a bitch. So I had to find my own voice, and it took me a while. It took me a while to find the fact that I trusted myself and had confidence in myself to be me and not be a little man, but to be me and say, well, I am the expert here. If you want to listen to me, I think we can work together and I can give you what you want. I can make you a better athlete. But, I'm not going to be somebody else. And that's what we all have to do. Women have to find our own voices. And I think men do too, for that matter. And I think that things are growing and women are having more confidence. And I think men are starting to see that we have something to contribute, and that in the whole broader realm of athletics.
Certainly. Yeah, it's pretty, as a male, to hear that is pretty awful, to think that all those limitations or roadblocks were so needless, that it's something that as a male I've never had to deal with. I've never had to wonder if people weren't listening, because especially in my profession, strength and conditioning, my maleness and my strength has only ever helped me. And I'm not a very naturally mobile person, but I can teach people flexibility and they listen for whatever reason. So that's very it's good to hear. It's very interesting to hear. I think more males should be exposed to that message. But I also really like where you got to. I think it kind of comes full circle to where we started with the striving for perfection, striving to be the best version of you that there is, not trying to be a little male, but fully realizing who you are, and having enough confidence in that to move forward and do your best, and without regard for one person's own biases are going to interfere.
It's a hard thing for, especially I think, young athletes and coaches and trainers coming out, and it's a competitive world, and they're trying to find out who they are, and of course they admire somebody, but you really have to take the time to find out who you are and your strength and your weak, because we're only as strong as our weakest link, and that weak link will make us stronger.
Sure.
And
it's usually a strength in some way.
yeah, because you have to, and the harder you have to work at it, I think the more quality we'll have to share with your clients and your people down the road. We have to, but it's not comfortable to delve into your weakness. It's not fun, and you want to, immediately be an expert, and it takes time. So it's just, again, trying to take the time to find your voice, accept who you are, and work to be the best you can be. And that sounds pretty,
Sure.
trite perhaps, but it's true. I just think it must be so hard for young people, adolescents and pre-adolescents these days, growing up in this world where they are comparing themselves, and I hope they can, maybe the meditation in school will help them listen to their inner voice, and they can get off the couch and get moving, so they can find something they like to do, so they get some enjoyment out of doing, and not pretending that there's something else, or just or whatnot. So
get lost in whatever they're doing. Definitely. Well, this is my question I always like to build to, and I think it goes well here. If you could create one rite of passage for all our society, what would it be?
I think people need to get out and be challenged in a way that they can contribute to a community, and also prove to themselves that they have an inner strength. So how that could be done perhaps would be to have young people of a certain age go out and have to camp and find their own food and make their own food, and resources, and cut down some wood, and work together as a community and a team, and find their own strengths, and get off the internet and get off handheld devices, and look at nature and be around nature, and then find the way that, this is what humans, we survive because we are a community, and we had to come together. And I think we're lost that because we're all on our individual devices, and people are so isolated, even amongst all the noise, they're isolated. And I think that we need to get face to face, and have to go through some kind of a challenge together. And maybe it's going to some poor community somewhere where they have to help others build something together, or do some farming someplace to help people, create food. Whatever it is, it's a challenge that they come together. And, they have, I know, these kind of outdoor wilderness treks for some youths, that they do that for troubled youths. And I think that, and my children went to for a while, they went to a Waldorf school, so they'd go camping for a weekend every spring. And, it was, not exactly too tough by any means, but you were out there, and you had to get the fire, you had to make the fire, you had to cook on it, you had to come together as a team. And I think that people need to have that sense of community, but also, how can I contribute? How do I fit in? And I think that that's what young people need, is to find a way to fit in and work together. And I think that's what we're lacking.
Community and purpose. And a purpose that drives contribution to the community. We can rally around that. We need some sort of common values and common wants, and we can rally around. Hopefully, communities can start to rally around the idea of movement, health, and nutrition in life.
When people are out actively doing something together, they're gonna feel better. They'll share ideas. They're gonna share, purposes, and sometimes running across someone who you don't necessarily agree with, but sharing in listening to each other is also a big part of that, because you have to find and work with people in a community, right? There's going to be, always challenges with that, but that's called maturity, and that's part of being a community is how you work through that, and how you listen to other people's viewpoints. Maybe you don't agree with them, but you have to come to a common ground.
I love that. We do need to be forced to talk to people to get a different perspective. I think, as crazy as it seems, Twitter, Facebook, these things, kind of like the printing press, can be wonderful tools to expose you to multiple ideas, but I think often they're also used for you to find whoever believes what you believe, and kind of get in your own confirmation bias cycles, which I guess you're forced out of that when you're forced to deal with people in the real world. You can't just fall into the same confirmation bias unless your social circle's a little too small, maybe,
Right.
and you're not getting in those challenging experiences. Well, okay, Andrea, I've taken plenty of your time. I so appreciate. This has been awesome to get the chance to sit down and talk and get to know you better.
Well, I thank you so much for having me.
Of course. No, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Is there anything you're working on now, or anywhere people can find you or find other things done?
Well, my website is kettlebellfitness.com, and right now I'm working on some more things for Dragon Door, and we're coming up with some more ideas down the road, and possibly some social media things. And we're also finishing up another manual for the level 2, so we've got our hands full with all that. And my own personal things, I've got some ideas for a few little projects down the road, but we'll see how fast I get those done. So otherwise, you go to dragondor.com to get some more information about workshops, products, books, a lot of exciting information. So look for me. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook too. So
Wonderful.
And I will be traveling and doing some workshops coming up here, and do online training. So if anyone wants to get some more information, please contact me.
Perfect. Well, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Dallas, I think, in October.
Yeah, I know. We'll have a good weekend. It'll be a lot of fun.
I'm really looking forward to it. Awesome.